I do think if you're trying to create a learning environment, you do need to say, hey, well, what's the intent here? I think I've heard things like this. Maybe it's my quote. I don't know. But I think there's,
Okay.
in my mind, I have, at any given moment, there's like a hard choice and an easy choice. And I think the quote in my mind is like, usually you should choose the hard one.
Yeah.
Like if there's two things I can do right now, the harder one's probably the one I should do.
Yeah. It's the path forward, right? The best path forward.
This is the Leave It Better podcast, powered by the Side Out Foundation. Here's your host, Hall of Fame coach, Janice Kruger.
Today, my guest is Dan Fisher, the head coach at the University of Pittsburgh. He's been there for 11 seasons, and in those 11 seasons, he's had unprecedented success. You're playing in that ACC conference that I coached in for 20 years. Good job. Won 5 of those championships in the last 7 years. I believe in the last 4 years, you've taken your teams to the Elite 8. You've been in the Final Four the last 3 years. And another huge stat, I think, for you is that you sit atop a list of Division I programs in which you've won 169 matches and is the highest number. And this is against teams like Nebraska and Texas and Wisconsin. And so you have really done and are doing an amazing job there at Pitt. And I guess we can say, Dan, you really know how to win.
Well, thanks for that kind introduction. It never feels like that from the inside, right?
Right. It's work.
Yep.
You're just working. Get better each day, right?
It feels hard. It never feels like it's easy. So
yeah. Every year's a different year. Every team has got some different things. That was always something that I truly enjoyed about coaching, is that there's a lot of things that are the same, but there's a lot of things that are different that bring some really motivating or inspiring things to the program.
Yeah, agreed. And I guess I've always tried to look at success like yearly as like, did I get the most out of each player? Did I get the most out of that team? Or I guess, how close did I get, or us as a staff, to getting the most out of that group that we could have? If you're good at it, I think you always feel like you could have done it a little bit more.
Right. That's interesting. I'm going to drop back just for a second, and then we'll come back. You won a NAIA championship back in 2012. I think you were a runner-up in 2011. Mm-hmm. Winning a championship at any level is difficult. And I think in your last year, you did it with an undefeated season. Again, fairly rare. In your span of coaching, you've earned 2 gold medals, working with Team USA in the 2015 Pan Am Games, and then with the U21 team in 2022.
And last year as well.
And last year as well. Oh my God. Yeah. See, I knew I was going to get a little update there. So have you been involved with the national team for 20 years or 21 years then?
Well, I guess in 1999 and 2000, as a player, I was more of a B team guy. But I had a few caps. There was a few events that, Doug Beal was the head coach at the time, that took a younger team too. So I went on a Japan tour. And then I think in 2000 in Switzerland, right before the Olympics, the A team ended up pulling out. And so they got a group of guys to go represent the senior team against Russia and Italy, like 2 weeks before the Olympics. We got shelled, but it was a great experience. So I think I started as a player, and Hugh McCutcheon was an assistant with that group. And I think the first thing I did with the national team was 2006, with a youth select boys program. Mm-hmm. And then 2007, I was an assistant with Alan Knipe
Yeah. Okay.
for the World University Games.
Mm-hmm.
And it was John Hawks and I were his assistants. And then a few years later, I had switched the women's side, and Hugh McCutcheon simultaneously had switched to the women's side. So I asked to do some things with the senior team, and Coach Karai was an assistant. So I think I probably benefited from, being on the boys' side when Hugh was, and then him switching over, and just him and Coach felt like we were probably pretty philosophically aligned. And I love international volleyball. I loved the idea of trying to make a team in a short amount of time. And I also just selfishly have learned a lot from being around other coaches. And because when you're with your college team, not that you don't learn, but you're just not,
Mm-hmm.
you're around your staff and you run practice the way you're comfortable with. And so, yeah, it's being involved with USA has been very beneficial. And I'm grateful to have those opportunities, but also, representing your country is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think as a young girl, I always had that dream too, to one day play. You also played professionally, I think, for 5 years. Another tidbit that I thought was interesting is you played beach.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You are all rounded out there. Men, women, indoor, outdoor.
I was good at a lot of things. I wasn't maybe great at any of them. I was good enough to play pro. I was good enough to play pro on the beach, but I was a middle to lower guy on the AVP. I coached NAI. I've coached men, women, coached club volleyball. I think it's helped me to be, just to have that perspective. And then of course, the thing that you said at the start, playing and living abroad is probably, learning other languages. I've never really gotten over that.
Until I started to research you, as I went out to get all the head coaches from last year's Final Four, I learned so much about you, and I am truly impressed with your track record and especially of your success. And I believe a lot of those things, the people you have been around, like those names like Coach Karai, Hugh McCutcheon, Alan Knipe, and on, I'm really jealous to have had, that type of education, right?
That's right.
You get an opportunity to see things, to talk about things with those individuals. How important was that to you, developing who you are as a coach today?
I don't know if you could put a value on it, but I think the word you said was education. And I think I have better perspective on that now. I didn't really realize how fortunate I was. I guess at the time, it's because I was a fairly high level player,
Mm-hmm.
that I was, I played for Doug Beal, World University Games. That the roster I didn't make as a player was Al Skates was the head coach and John Spratt was the assistant. And then, I've had these, I guess I've just been fortunate to be around people that think about the game at a pretty high level. And the first thing I did while I was at Concordia, I was asked to be an assistant for like a B team event, the Pan Am Games. And that was with Reed Sunahara was the head coach. And I was an assistant with Tom Pestalacci. And our team leader was Mike Hebert.
Yes. Oh.
So Mike Hebert was the one that kind of pulled me aside after and said, "Hey, if you're ever interested in leaving Concordia, let me know." And I know some people. And then a year later is when the Pitt job opened up. And of course, he got his start at Pitt and still knew a lot of the administrators here. And so it was a big part of me getting my foot in the door here. And then was really a mentor for me. Like the first couple of years, he was someone I'd call, and bizarre scenarios of coaching, I'd be like, it wasn't so much X's and O's. It was more just how to run a program, or, hey, I'm in this situation with this player. Have you ever been in anything like this? Or just, hey, like contract negotiations, or, so he just, sure you knew Mike well. He just always had just a big picture perspective, because as a coach, it's easy to get caught up in the weeds and something seems like a big deal.
Yeah, right.
But 10 years later, you're like, that wasn't that big of a deal. In the moment, it seems
Yeah.
big, but Mike was always really good at helping me have good perspective and just always encourage. He's a really positive human and encouraging me. And I think young coaches, I could be a lot better at this. They just need someone encouraging them too,
Right, right. Yeah, I had the privilege to know him as well. He was, so knowledgeable for you having him on speed dial, basically.
Right.
He was just so kind to everybody and willing to share and educate. I think if I look back on all those coaches that you have been around, I feel as though it might have even started with Jim Coleman and Doug Beal and all that stuff kind of coming down.
Yeah.
And their desire to teach and to grow the game. That was always something.
So it's funny because Jim Coleman, I don't think the younger generation really knows who he is, but that B team event I was talking about in Switzerland, Jim Coleman was the head coach.
Okay.
And Rudy Suara was the assistant.
Oh my God. That's
so yeah, but at the time I'm like, you're kind of like, who's this old guy? And then one of my teammates was like, oh, he's kind of like helped start USA Volleyball. It's kind of a big deal. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, kind of big deal. Yeah. I used to go to his coaching camps back in the day. Just, geez, you have been so lucky. So
super lucky. Yeah.
Super lucky. And I believe you have taken and pulled all of this information into something that's really working for you everywhere you've been, but for sure here at Pitt in the last few years. Your players, when I watch your team, when I watch you on the sideline, what are you, 6'6", 6'3"? 6'6". You're towering, man, and so calm, and you got something that you're keeping to kind of soothe you on the sideline with your lozenges or whatever those might be. And I watch you with your team. You have to tell me what that is at some point.
Yeah.
I watch you with your team and you're so level and your kids are playing so hard. How do you get your players, build that relationship with your players that allows that type of connection with them and also then helps them make the connection as a group, as a team, to go for this common goal that you have set out for them?
Well, is the first question about the throat lozenges?
Yeah, all right. That we can start with the lozenges.
So there is a story there.
Okay.
So it started because I had a cold at some point. And so our trainer had some cough drops and I was sucking on them all game. And then it started to become just this thing, like we won. And then I remember there was at some point that season, if I'm remembering correctly, I said, hey, this is a disgusting habit. I got to stop. And also it kind of takes the place of not drinking a lot of water and having to pee all the time, right?
Right.
So and I remember my assistant, Coach Kellen Petrone and Lindsay Bohonic at the time said, hey, I think I just need to stop this habit. And they both looked at me, they're like, we just won 20 games in a row. You're going to keep eating those cough drops. So I try to limit myself to 1%.
I'll have to count those. That's really fun. So yeah, the second part of the question was about your relationship, that calm demeanor.
I don't know that I agree that I'm calm on the sidelines all the time, but I am so grateful for the relationships with the players. I'm grateful that they let me continue to challenge them. I know I fall short with, being the best I could be for them. And at times, here's what I try to do. I try to model. I think the best athletes, they watch, they listen some, but mostly they watch, right? And they can tell if it's genuine. Mm-hmm. So you can use words like care and diversity and inclusion and love, and you can say words, right? But then they're going to see, like, is this an inclusive environment? Does this person care for me? So I think they feel it. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a consistency piece, right? The way someone feels about you or the way your team culture is your environment over time. not that you can't have bad moments, but if you start having a lot of bad moments, that breaks some trust.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just consistently having high standards and consistently showing and modeling that you care about your athletes is what my staff and I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big challenge. And so what you try to do is just model when you do mess up, like, hey, I'm sorry, but you can't do it too much, right? Like you can't be married and be a jerk to your partner all the time.
It won't last, right?
It's just, you can have a bad day or a bad moment, but you start doing that every day, and then the person you're with is like, wow, what's going on here?
But you are human. You're human. Humans make errors. Humans make errors. Yep. And then you have to, it's what you do next. I think that's pretty important.
Yep. But when you're young, it's like, sometimes I've had girls that, and I think I have a bad memory.
Or that's good.
I just choose to live my life this way. I don't know. But I've had girls come in and go, hey, remember like that thing my freshman year I did, and you were so mad. And I kind of go, no, I don't really remember. I kind of moved on from that. We dealt with it at the time, and it's building trust is just something you do every day, and if you have a good day and you have a good practice, I think that builds trust.
Yeah, the folk you're calling a timeout, and they are definitely looking to you to have that discussion about what is maybe a potential solution. So what kinds of things are you telling them in those huddles? Are they specific to a actual play or an opportunity, or motivating or inspiring?
I mean, there's some, let's put it this way. I don't think my team loves playing for me that much. And they know it. When we're like a superior, like when we think we're better, I don't think it's necessarily the most fun environment, because we're trying, and they know it, like we're trying to keep a high standard. But I would hope, and I think that when we're playing as the better teams on our schedule or in the NC2A tournament, I would hope that they would say that a lot of our timeouts are tactical and we're all trying to find a solution together. I think they would find it to be a fun environment, and I think that's what we train for, is to be challenged at the highest level, and and it's when someone's not, it was getting caught in the moment, trying to do something emotionally to get them back to being who they are, right? I mean, I don't know. How did you do it?
Sometimes I feel as though as a coach, when I had the situation and I had the scenario, I think I was pretty good at going, okay, I see it. I see there's this solution, that solution, and delivering in the one in the way that I thought would help the most. And hopefully I would get something back from them, either a look or a shake of their head, like, yeah, okay, that seems about right. I liked being in those moments as a coach. I thought those were the most fun, not the easiest things to be in, but it's what made coaching really fun and special. I think I read somewhere you said probably the biggest single difference as a women's team is just how strong the power of the group is. Mm-hmm. Now, you have your influence on that within your team. How is that structure built in the player leadership? What is it that you do there? Because that's another very powerful piece of any team, is that connectedness with each other.
No matter how much the sport changes or the rules change or paying athletes or whatever happens, I still think there's like a really just human desire to be part of a group. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something deep seated in us that we don't want to be banished from our clan,
Yeah.
So I think, so then it's like, okay, what is your group value and what are the norms and what are the things that could get you? And so I think some are the same every year, but we talk about those and we talk about what we value, and then we find ways to reinforce that. And so we have we have captains, but sometimes we'll have like a locker room cleanliness czar, or we'll have like a music czar so there might not be the captain, but their job is like, hey, if the locker room's not clean, they're gonna make sure that, hey, we value clean space. We want to come in here and have it look nice. Or we have a gratitude czar. If that's a value of ours, is like practicing gratitude. And so their job is to come up with ways to make that fun and bring it alive, or, hold their teammates accountable if we're complaining a lot. And it still comes down to modeling. If we're saying these words and my assistants aren't being grateful, or we have to show it more than just talk about it.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure for your players, that's a very appealing thing. So let's talk a little bit about your players. You have to have the women to get out there to get the job done in recruiting. And you got the transfer portal. You have just your regular freshman recruiting, or whatever that might be. Basically, what's your philosophy on recruiting, and what are you looking for as you're putting these 12, 14 players together that you think is really important to have, besides skill level of a volleyball player?
I get asked these questions, and I just wish I had better answers, because recruiting is really hard. Mm-hmm. And obviously at this point where our program's at, we're looking for the whole package. We want the physical athlete that jumps high and hits hard, that gets a 4.0, that's a great teammate. Yeah, and sometimes that more with an older player. They're more proven, and someone like Courtney Bazzario already had a bachelor's, so it wasn't like she was leaving for like some wrong reason, or she came in and had 1 year left, and But I think historically, before we were able to get more of the top kids, we valued a couple things. One is someone that hit hard, like a strong arm, maybe over a big jump. Mm-hmm. And some coaches, I think, really get caught up in, there's this idea, I think any business, people get caught up in like, oh, well, this person comes from a winning culture, so they must know how to win. And so I don't feel like I agree with that a ton. I would look at, someone like a girl like Kayla Lund, and she was on the good club team, don't get me wrong, but I just saw that she was passing every ball, hitting every ball, digging every ball. Like the load she was carrying on that club team, and how she was very skilled, that I just felt like, or Stephanie Williams, or we've had like a lot of players like that just carried big loads on their team. And I felt like once they got here and had to do a little less, that would be a better formula than a player that had a small role on a winning team, I guess.
Sure. I guess recruiting, you've been pretty darn successful. Last year, you had AVCA National Freshman of the Year with Olivia Babcock. Mm-hmm. Recruiting to Pittsburgh, the University of Pittsburgh. I've seen some things that you talked about in terms of what a great school, the opportunities there for an education, and just that community. Does that help you sell being a part of your volleyball program?
The school definitely does. I mean, we're a top 40 public school. I think we've had a couple girls that have come here and are now, 2 of them now are in med school.
Okay, cool.
I think with healthcare, it's kind of if you're interested in that, it's kind of a no-brainer. So I think the school is good enough, no doubt about it. When I got here, we weren't, we were in the Big East. We weren't in a Power 5, and we didn't have necessarily a great recent history of success. So I think the early days, the school was good enough, but I think, we build it on relationships. And so I think we're trying not to deviate too far from that. It's not like, hey, I'm going to invest in you, and are you going to invest in me? And, this is, so it starts with that. But I do think, having a bigger fan base certainly helps, right? I mean, we were in the early days, we're going up against Big Ten teams, and they're saying, well, they have a lot more people at the games. And that part has gotten better. But I still think we built this thing on relationships, and we're going to continue. That's going to be the main thing we sell.
So something you said there, Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, we've got 2 programs there. We've got Penn State, at least for a lot of folks. And now we have Pitt for volleyball. That first win you got playing Penn State University, what was that like in preparing for, but also the aftermath of such a perceived win by the folks in Pennsylvania, I am sure?
I'll back up and just say that Russ Rose was very, very kind and generous to me from the moment I got to Pitt, and we would do in the off season we do like a practice and scrimmage together every off season, even when it didn't really benefit him.
Yeah,
when our team wasn't that good, and so in terms of coaching staff, there wasn't really a rivalry like you'd think. I just felt like he was
sure.
Very gracious to me and helped us build this program in a way. Now, I will say that the fans look at it very differently.
Right. How about the players?
It's Western Pennsylvania. We're a football.
Yeah.
This is football country, and Pitt, Penn State, and it is. And then within volleyball, just the success that they had for so many years. I think probably that was one of the first wins. Beating them in 3 at Penn State, I think, was a lot of people in volleyball were just like, wait, what's going on here? Did I read this right? Now, they did turn around and beat us in 5 at home 2 days later. But I think that probably kind of was one of those maybe alerts for the volleyball world that, hey, maybe Pitt's got a pretty good team.
Yeah. I do love Russ Rose. I went to grad school with him, and he's always looking. He's so helpful, and he is very generous. I think maybe this is what I love about college athletics, is that we get this opportunity to compete, because in competing, hopefully that brings your best stuff to the top. And what more fun is there than having a super high level game where, it matters, but at the end of the game, it's like, yeah, that was really fun playing you. I watched a couple interviews of your players, and the one thing I noticed when they were being interviewed is that when they were talking, they were always talking about the NCAA tournament. This is preseason, before preseason, NCAA tournament, getting into the tournament, and having a deep run. And, maybe the goal is to the Final Four, which you've hit the last 3 years. But there wasn't mention, like sometimes it's like, I want to win the conference, I want to do this. It was that end mark that you had set for them to strive for every day and practice to get better. Is that something that you have intentionally done to put, the final destination of where you want to be? Or was that just something they've taken and done on their own?
I think so. We've been pretty intentional about how we frame the season and our road, to get there. But I also think the last, 2 years, we have girls that were in the Final Four the year before. So it's certainly winning the ACC is part of that road to get there. But, I think the way I frame the season is largely influenced by Mike Hebert, actually.
Okay.
I start out with, and I write a letter to the team, and I present it to him the first team meeting, and here's what I think, our path to be great will be. And then we present a document that we call Championship DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the culture DNA and then the volleyball DNA. And this is a living document. And so then we have 4 parts to our season. So part 1 is preseason. And then part 2 would be looking at the ACC. Part 3 would be halfway through ACC, and Part 4 is looking at the NCAA tournament bracket. And so that's something, that part I stole from Mike. And I think and so every time we have those team meetings, we'll look at our championship DNA and decide, hey, were we right? Do we need to cross something out? Do we need to add something? And we like the idea of DNA because people have big rocks or pyramids. And the idea with DNA for us is like, hey, like the molecules, like this is like, DNA is who you are, right? And some of them are aspirational, but it's like we look at it and go, hey, is this really who we are? Are we living it? And so, that document changes throughout the year, and we have open discussions, and the discussions are based on, some feeling and emotion of, hey, how does it feel in the gym? And others is based on, the evidence. Hey, this is what our team's hitting. Here's what our middles are hitting. Here's what our out of system zone 4 numbers are, and so, I think we're intentional, about, wanting to win a national championship, but we know there's steps along the way, and getting to the Final Four is really, really hard. And so, that is a major, major goal. And so we talk about that a ton, because the energy does change once you're there.
Sure.
Hopefully we can take the next step, but just getting there is a really big deal.
Yeah. I got into several Division II Final Fours, and I remember the first one, and that was such a learning experience. It was in Lakeland, Florida, and I remember speaking at the banquet before, and I said Lakeland, and oh my God, they had the laughter was probably a nerve-breaking situation. So so you've been in these Final Fours, and each time you go, your players are learning something. You're learning something. You're seeing something. Is there anything that, well, I don't know if you want to share this so people would know, that you are thinking is something that you want to bring into your program that may be helpful to get past that? I mean, it is a long season. It is a challenging season, and the competitiveness of these players and teams right now, it is just fun for the fans, fun for us getting to watch on TV, if not in person. Is there anything there that you have gathered?
I think every year we get a little bit better at managing like the noise around it. That being said, this year we had 2 of our best players were freshmen. So we prep them leading in. We try to be very, very, like, it's almost like our weekly calendar turns into a daily, turns into like a hourly. Minute by minute, we're really very clear about what their schedule is, and when they're studying, and when they're sleeping, when they're getting ready for a photo shoot, how much time they have to do their hair. We try to be very, when they're off their phones and napping, so just trying to program in downtime is huge. In terms of on the court, I guess it's different players. Rachel, our setter, and has been out there for 3 years in a row, but I think we've done a pretty decent job. Not that we can't get better. I think we've been good defensively. For whatever reason, I think 3 years in a row, our highest pin has hit like 150. So we just, we haven't had that Maddie Skinner or someone that just really was like unstoppable. Now, that's hard to do. You're us against Nebraska last year was the 2 best defensive teams. It's not easy to be dominant offensively, but I think ultimately, if we want a championship, we need a couple of pins to go off. And so I got to figure out how to be better as a coach, and our setters need to be better, and our hitters need to figure out how to do that, how to put ourselves in a position where we're very dominant offensively at the very end of the year.
A lot of things also come into play, like it's a long season. It's a challenging season. and the health and the of your players. And that's another science project that you have to work with to keep them competitive and on the right path.
Janice, do you have any advice for me on how I can win another game?
Control everything as best you can and foresee as much as you can and make plans for that. And maybe I've heard some teams go through the scenarios so that if it does happen, it's not a surprise. And it's those things because you've trained all year and you're excellent at coaching them, and they're all in the right space of getting better every day and that kind of stuff. But it is sometimes those outside pieces, and there's a little luck, honestly.
Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow as a coach, right?
Yeah, it really. Yeah. Oh, I had one of those too.
Yeah, no, but that's how I look at it. I feel like the only thing a coach can do is kind of skew the percentages.
Yeah,
you can kind of move it more in your favor, but
yep. At the end of the day, it's get out there and play. So you have someone that's your leader there at Pitt, Heather Like, your athletic director. I'm so impressed with her, and I'm sure in the things I read about her and sort of her philosophy of things, I feel like you two really fit well together and see things well. And didn't you just get a new facility or something?
Being built. So we have a year and a half. So there's every day I walk by and I see progress. Yeah. So Heather has been, and our former chancellor, just really instrumental in creating a really great home for some of our Olympic sports.
Yeah. I had read this, and I don't know if this is still your favorite quote. Motivation is temporary. Inspiration is permanent. I'm trying to lead an inspired life by Kelly Slater. And so I looked him up yesterday, and I was looking at all the things that he has said. What an amazing guy. And then my question was, are you a surfer at 6'6"? Have you been on a board?
I still get out there a couple times a year.
Do you? Yeah.
But to me, a surfer is someone, I surf, but a surfer is like someone that devotes their life to it. But I certainly, it's been when I lived in Hawaii, and it's certainly, I love the ocean, and it's a sport that's very consuming when you get into it.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, that's it. I love that quote. I have, probably should update the website with some other ones.
Do you have a new one or something that you would now replace that with?
There's two others that could jump to me. One is one from Mike Hebert. He would say, always evaluate intent. So he was always saying, hey, like, are they trying to do the right thing? What are they? And they're just not getting it yet.
Yeah.
So I try to keep that in mind, not just for my players, but just, my staff or, my kids.
Sure. Right. I was going to ask you about your kids.
So I do think if you're trying to create a learning environment, you do need to say, hey, what's the intent here? I think I've heard things like this. Maybe it's my quote. I don't know. But I think there's, okay. In my mind, I have, at any given moment, there's like a hard choice and an easy choice. And I think the quote in my mind is like, usually you should choose the hard one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like if there's two things I can do right now, the harder one's probably the one I should do.
Yeah. It's the path forward, right? The best path forward. You mentioned being a dad. You've got a daughter, Eden.
That's right.
And Max, your son, Max. And your wife, Joni, who was a soccer athlete. So you've got two athletes in the family. Are these kids interested at all in sports? I mean, that's a lot of cool influence from, having some really fun time in college playing sports.
Yeah, this was my daughter's first year playing club volleyball, just on like a regional team. And so I think probably the opposite. My kids do play soccer and volleyball have been the main two. They do, we send them to rock climbing camps, and
yeah,
I feel like we've probably been overcorrected into hey, not wanting to push them into sports and.
Sure.
But my daughter seems to be very passionate about volleyball lately.
So I'm guessing she probably has some favorites from your team that she's either connected with in some way that might be influencing, or maybe it's her dad.
They've grown up around it. So yeah, she's very close with girls on the team. And over the years, they've been her babysitters. And talk about modeling. I haven't had to explain to my daughter why you want to be a big, strong, powerful woman. That's just all. That's not a conversation we'll ever need to have. In fact, right now at 11, it's more just like, am I ever going to grow?
Oh, yeah. I think there was a picture on your website. She might get some of that height. How tall is your wife?
My wife's 5'8", and
okay,
I don't know.
All right.
We'll see. I think my wife was a late bloomer, but I don't know. I would have thought my daughter would have been pretty tall, but she's kind of tracking pretty average. So time will tell.
Yeah, right. Don't tell her that. It'll break her heart. I think you mentioned just TV, the importance of TV, the fan base, or the popularity of volleyball in general. In the country, in high school being the largest participation sport. And now we're getting opportunities with ESPN and other areas to see volleyball.
I am as optimistic as I've ever been about women's sports and women's volleyball. And I think that the stat from last year was, I think, over 50%, something like 51 or 54% of the viewers of the Final Four were women, which was a 50% increase.
Yeah, that's big.
I think we finally hit a tipping point where women are supporting women's sports, where we're not counting on, the football fan or to come to the games. And so I think that was really what was needed, and that you're seeing women consume college athletics and ideally the pro leagues as well. You're seeing it in soccer and women's basketball right now. So the growth has come from women. I've seen it like in Pittsburgh, whenever I drop my kids off at preschool or the elementary school, which, early child education is predominantly female, like the women just want to talk to me about the team. They know all the players, they know. And so it's like I'm seeing the statistics, but I'm also just seeing it in the community of the passion that that people feel about our team, and so I think we're in a really good spot right now.
Yeah.
But we are the thing that challenges a lot of these TV contracts. There's like a 10-year delay of they've already signed a contract of how many men's basketball games get aired or women's basketball or softball. So we're still fighting that a little bit of getting on TV a little bit more. And so there is a little bit of a lag there that can be frustrating as a coach, where you're like, hey, why is this game against Louisville not on a linear network? And so that part's frustrating, but I feel good that it is happening.
Dan, thanks for being on today. I really admire what you have been able to do in your career in coaching volleyball and as a player. The success that is around you, it means, number one, that you are great at the game and teaching the game, training the game, strategies for the game, but also you have that extra little special sauce that is about the human connection and the people who are the most important parts of everything when you're putting a team together. And I just wish you the best this fall. I'll be watching.
Yeah, well, thank you, Janice, for the kind words and for doing this podcast. And I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for listening. Please share your feedback with us at side-out.org.